I remember talking about some of the great storytellers that really influenced me. And one of my heroes, of course, the interviews with Bill Moyers, talking about the power of myth and the influence that myth has on us. The other one that was pretty influential, and also the one that I deeply regret not ever meeting, because I know he would have been a blast to talk to, was Stan Lee. I grew up with Marvel Comics, and it's interesting watching their characters evolve from like the mid to late 60s to now. I mean, the Iron Man that I grew up with isn't the same one that Robert Downey Jr. plays. Hulk was totally different. He was just always angry. He didn't talk. Nobody liked him. He was always misunderstood. He was always having, a bad day. He didn't become the one that everybody liked hanging around with because everybody was always against him. Thor always spoke in Old English. Captain America, he had just recovered his memory and gotten unthawed from the iceberg from, Second World War, and now he's in the 1960s and he's trying to figure it all out. And it was things like that, but watching how Stan Lee took this completely unbelievable premise of a superhero, somebody with incredible powers, and made them into something that you identified with, that you associated with, that you looked forward every month. You knew when the comic books were going to get dropped off at the store. You started saving your money. I started taking back bottles. I started doing whatever so I could have money to go get the next issue of Amazing Stories, the Avengers, the X-Men, Spider-Man, Thor, Werewolf by Night, all the really cool ones, because he knew how to draw you into that story. You wanted to see what was going to happen. And the fact that each issue usually ended on a cliffhanger, just like the old-fashioned Saturday morning serials in the movies, that was the ideal hook. And that's how I try to tell my stories. In each of my books, specifically the Roadhouse Sons series, I have 3 storylines going at the same time. The first storyline is the one that deals with that book. It's a storyline that will begin on the first page and it will end on the last page, just to give you a sense of closure when you read it. The second storyline is something that will begin on the first page of that book, and it will end maybe in the next book, maybe in the one after. It still has a finite. Then there's the third storyline that sometimes became a bit of a challenge to keep going through the series. And that is one that begins on the first page of book 1. And it will not end until the last page of book 7. That's something that ties the whole story arc together. And that is something that goes over a period of time from 1978 to 2001. But it harkens back to something that happened a little bit before that. So it's really a unique and complex idea, which at the time when I was mapping and graphing out the entire stories, sounded really, really cool. Once you get into it, you have to stop and think, well, what was I getting myself into? But again, I fall back to Stan Lee. He had those characters in Marvel Comics that grew, that developed, that evolved, that became these little figures on a page. And I remember the early Captain America cartoons, and I remember the early Fantastic Four cartoons. And they were really just taking a picture one frame at a time. Nothing moved, but you had somebody reading the dialogue. And in 1969, I'm sitting there thinking that that is the most incredible thing I had ever seen. And you want to know something? I look at the latest Marvel movies. I look at the Doctor Strange. I look at the Endgames. I look at all of them, and I still get the same feeling. Because even though Stan Lee isn't with us, he started telling a story that eventually took on a life outside of the pages of the comic book. And it became something that was a part of our story. It became a part of my childhood. It became a part of all my memories. And so when I see Chris Hemsworth and Robert Downey Jr. and all those guys going out and portraying those characters, I think back to when my friends and I were growing up and we were outside playing and we were doing the same thing. And the really great part is you see everybody love the story that Stan Lee told so much that they keep that story alive. Nobody tries to reinterpret it. Nobody tries to reimagine it. Nobody tries to repackage it. They just want to retell it. They want to relive it. They want to preserve it. They want to bring it on to the next generation, to the next level. But they love the story, they love the characters, and they love the storyteller. And so for me, that goes really deep. I don't want to just tell a story. I don't want to just write a book that you're going to go out and buy. I want to write a book that you're going to look forward to going out to seeing, that you're going to wonder what's going to happen to this character. When are they going to do something else? You know, that was what Agatha Christie did, Dorothy Sayers, Arthur Conan Doyle. All these people, they wrote a story because they wanted to. They wanted to tell it. It was going to be fun. But the really cool thing was they wanted you to believe it. For however long it took you to finish that serial, that installment, that novel, whatever, they wanted you to be in it. And that's the art of a storyteller. Whether you're going to sit here and do an interview, whether I'm going to be around a campfire with a whole bunch of campers and little kids, whether I'm going to be sitting across the card table with my friends, telling them about the latest adventure, escapade, or whatever I got into, you're telling the story. You're engaging them. For whatever time period, their life has stopped, their reality has been put on hold, and they are now with you. And if you're going to be a storyteller, you've got to take care of them. Stan Lee took care of his readers. Stan Lee took care of his viewers. Agatha Christie took care of her readers. Dashiell Hammett took care of his readers. Stephen King takes care of his readers. That's what being a storyteller is all about. Taking care of the people that have trusted you with themselves.